We spend so much time, so much energy, agonizing over making the perfect decision, right? But what if I told you that's only half the battle? Today, we're going to dig into a really powerful idea that the most critical work, the stuff that actually determines if you win or lose, starts the second after you've made your choice. So, you've done it. You've made the call, the team has a direction, and there's this huge sense of relief. And we all ask ourselves, okay, is the hard part over now? It feels like it should be, but honestly, the real work is often just getting started. You see, getting a decision from just an idea in a meeting to something real, something that actually works out in the world, well, that's not about luck. It's a process. It's a discipline. And we're going to break it down into three really clear parts. This is what we call the decision after the decision. And the framework for getting it right? It's actually pretty simple. It all boils down to three powerful steps. First, you communicate. Then, you execute. And finally, you measure and adjust. Let's dive into what each of those really means. All right, first up, communicate with absolute total clarity. This part, it is completely non-negotiable. I mean, a decision that just lives in your head or in one little meeting room, it's basically doomed from the start. Your job here is to crush any confusion and get everyone on the exact same page. So how do you do that? Well, you use a checklist. You have to answer 5 critical questions for everyone. 1, what exactly was the decision? Be super specific. 2, who made it? That creates accountability. 3, why was it made? This gives people purpose. It's the why that gets people moving. 4, how are we going to measure success? This defines what winning actually looks like. And number 5, this one is so important. What are the reversal triggers? In other words, what would have to happen for us to say, you know what, we need to rethink this? Answering all of this stuff up front saves you from that painful, wait, I thought we were doing something totally different conversation later on. Okay, so even a perfectly communicated decision is still just an idea if nobody does anything. Execution is where the rubber meets the road. And let me tell you, that road is usually full of potholes. Yeah, this is where you run into real-world problems. You'll get things like passive-aggressive behavior, right? Where people nod and agree in the meeting, but then quietly drag their feet. Or maybe some new, conflicting information pops up that just blows a hole in your original plan. Or, stuff just happens. The market shifts, a competitor makes a surprise move. A decision doesn't just execute itself. You have to actively steer it through all these obstacles. And that leads us to our final step, which is maybe the most difficult one of all. Having the courage to adjust. And look, this isn't a sign of weakness. It is the ultimate sign of strong leadership. It's about being obsessed with measuring what matters and then being brave enough to change course when the data tells you you're wrong. So what are we measuring exactly? A good success metric isn't just some random number you pull out of the air. It has to be a super clear indicator that is directly tied to the original goal. So if your decision was all about growing the business, your success metric better be something like sales growth. The link has to be direct and totally undeniable. But what happens when ego gets in the way of making those adjustments? Well, let me tell you a powerful and kind of painful cautionary tale about the sunk cost fallacy. This is a true story about a company making a massive tech investment. So the decision was made. Build a huge new software platform. $2 million in, it was already starting to feel like maybe this wasn't the right call. The early results just weren't there. You know that feeling? The doubts were starting to creep in. But the executive in charge, he just pushed forward. We have a deadline, he said. Go figure it out. By the time they hit $5 million, the team on the ground knew they were on the wrong path. But the order from the top was just to keep going. At $10 million, I mean, the failure was obvious to pretty much everyone. But by now, the executive's ego was completely tied to this project's success. He insisted, I've made my decision. We need to see it through. And then, $25 million. At this point, the project was just a giant black hole sucking in money, and the failure was painfully, publicly clear to the entire company. But the executive who made that first call, he still refused to change course. Finally, the CEO had to step in, and his words are a masterclass in what real leadership looks like in a crisis. He just said it. We've made an incorrect decision, we need to write the project off, and we need to move down a different path. He had the courage to stop the bleeding and make the tough but absolutely correct call. Wow, that's a dramatic story, right? But it holds such an important lesson for all of us. So let's take everything we've talked about and boil it down into a practical playbook that you can actually use. Here it is, your post-decision playbook. Number 1, create that crystal clear communication plan. Answer all 5 of those key questions. 2, actively hunt for the real-world risks to your plan and figure out how you're going to deal with them. And number 3, relentlessly measure your results. And, this is the big one, have the courage to adjust, even if it means admitting that first decision was wrong. Remember, making a great decision is just getting to the starting line. The real victory is always in the follow-through. So I'm going to leave you with a question to chew on. Which of your decisions right now might need a second look through this lens?